Uh, Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. I also want to share my screen, so let me. Okay, are you seeing the presentation, right? Perfect. Let me move your faces so I will see all of you. Um, Thank you so much for being here. I developed this course because I took a course on Next.js, and I realized that everything that I believe in uh, about Next.js, it was wrong. Uh, it's actually the best and most straightforward framework to work with React that is in the market at the moment. I will not say that it's perfect because nothing it is completely perfect. It has some cons, but it's definitely the easiest and the straightforward. Um, like they took time to develop something that is more opinionated, but also more straightforward to use, which is cool. And I think it's important that we share that knowledge because it's super new in the industry. There is a whole gap there of knowledge, and there is so much miscommunication and misunderstanding about what really is Next.js and the idea of server component um, intimidate a lot of people without the need, really. So this is what we will learn during all our sessions. We will talk a lot about Next.js. I want that you learn how to install what is eh, what makes the architecture of Next.js super easy to use for routing and why that is a huge change in the idea of React. Um, how to bring data, how to use data in a server component, how to deal with all the CRUD operations in server component. And the idea, of course, is that at the end of these workshops, these 5 Saturdays, you will have the ability to create your own project. And my goal is to give you a template that you can use for all your projects. So let's see if we can make it. I think all of you know me. I work on Tectonica as a technical project manager until last December. And from there, I've been volunteer with a bunch of organizations, and part of that volunteer is also allowed me also to learn about Next.js. I'm very happy of this opportunity because I have this idea that you never graduate. You need to keep learning all the things. And this is something that I really have now the time to do. And the biggest question is why I'm doing this for free to Tectonica. And it's, of course, a win-win situation. But first of all, is that when they deprecate create React app, we were in the middle of one core in Tectonica, and I took the decision of moving to Vite, not Next.js, because at the moment I thought that it was too complicated to explain Next.js. And I want to acknowledge that I was completely wrong. Um, the thing that we should do was moving to Next.js because it's the most straightforward use of React framework for use React that is there in the market now. And at the moment, I took the decision because I thought that it would be more complicated to explain the idea of server, but it wasn't true. And I think that I own Tectonica that mistake, and I need to give them to the graduates the opportunity to learn that is actually completely the opposite. Everything that I told you about Next.js that being complicated is completely wrong. Um, these are the training objectives for today. So I really want to talk a little, um, I don't know, 50 minutes of the workshop around what is Next.js and what did change on the React ecosystem. Then we will try to start working on coding all of you answered my form telling that your favorite way of learning it was hands-on projects. So we will try to do that. And today we will get to the point of understanding how easy the routing on Next.js and how straightforward the configuration of the folders will give you routes without hooks, without anything else, without extra installations or dependencies, which is something that is the first time that a framework will allow you to do that on React. So let's understanding why learning Next.js will benefit you. And it's basically because the idea of React Server Component changed the paradigm of React and changed the idea of JavaScript only working on the browser. They really changed that, which is a huge milestone for React. And they create this concept of server components, which imply the existence of something that is called client component. And I will try to explain you what is the difference, and I will try to teach you to identify the difference between a server component and a client component. But for now, the thing that you need to understand is that for Next.js, by default, everything is a server component first. And what is that is a changing of understanding how JavaScript usually only works on your server, on your browser. So the server didn't know anything about JavaScript. That changed with Next.js, which is a huge change if you consider that React is only 11 years old. Like it's a still very new framework. But the people on Facebook has this obsession to make it more faster. And I think they're in the right track because it's really now super faster now that the ability that they give the server the ability of knowing about JavaScript, which is really what happened. So all of you are familiar with page like these ones, like you are waiting that your page loads because if you remember what you learned how the internet works, the thing is that the you type the URL and the URL send the request to the server and the server give back an HTML first, but that HTML is empty because it doesn't have yet the JavaScript. It has to go to the bottom of the page to get to the JavaScript part, and then the server will give back the JavaScript. So that's low time that the user has with these kind of situations where you just see the empty HTML, but it doesn't bring the data or the JavaScript because it's waiting for another request for the server. That changed with Next.js. They create a way to make the server recognize JavaScript. It's basically what it happens. So now the server doesn't serve as a skeleton HTML with anything. It knows that it has JavaScript. And the process is known as iteration. So you can Google this idea of iteration with HTML, but they even explain it as the ability of, I have people asking enter the call, but I don't see anything else in the call either. Give me 1 second, I'll start sharing the screen just to see. Yep, I don't have more people. Okay, sorry about that. It's just, I was making sure that we don't lose anyone. So the idea of iteration is that when you put your web page in the server, the server knows about JavaScript. It's not only HTML. And that makes the load of the page super faster and also makes everything related to SEO, to search engine optimization, very easy because the web doesn't need to wait for the data because it's already there, which is blows your mind when you see it happening. You will find these slides in the repo and you will see the link here. I think this is the best plain English explanation that I found about what is a server render. Um, but it's basically that after you ask the server for a web, it renders the whole thing. It doesn't wait for you. It doesn't need to wait for your JavaScript or it doesn't need to wait for your data. It's already there, which is, if you think about something that change the own rules of React. We will have these rules if you see at the beginning when React started, everything was just put it here like manually inside the root. And if you remember, React has that line that put everything in the root with window. They change completely that. Like they don't depend of attaching JavaScript to HTML that make it so powerful now. And of course, everything depends of the idea what is a server component and what is a client component. And I will give you more examples very soon. But for now, the thing that you need to understand is that by default, Next.js thing that your component is a server component. It means that it has everything already there to be server for the server. And that gives you like superpowers because then you can do fetch directly on the server. You don't need to create the backend. You don't need to create that API in the back that give you access to fetch and that give you access to asynchronous functions because now you have that in the front end because the front end is the only thing now basically they combine the front end and the back end and it changed the rules. So I want to show you what we will do now. And I just noticed that it's not. I will also tell you how to develop it. So this company, Vercel, they started as a as an option for Heroku, as an easy option to deploy projects. Very easy. The idea is that you could deploy a project in seconds and you don't need to concern yourself with the build of the project to create productions and they will everything for you. That was the first thing that happened with Vercel. And then they moved to, well, if we are creating this easy path for rendering pages, maybe we need to change the way that the page is doing itself, and they create Next.js, and that's the whole ecosystem that they created now. So everything, the idea behind everything is that the load time, it was very slow, like making the load time faster, or even disappear the load time. So I think they made it. We will have, I create this project, which is very simple. You just have fake landing page for a conference is the only thing that is happening. But for example, this, I'm doing fetch of a placeholder for users that is there in the internet. And this this information is coming for the page. So you will learn how to do that. Like, it's not that we are rendering fake information that is hard code there. It is that we are fetching data. And of course, later we will learn how to manage Auth0 because they also simplify the process of Auth0, because the whole idea is making that load page easy. So they try to simplify each one of the process. Questions so far? Anything that is being confused or you need a little more of time? Hey, Noe, thank you so much for joining us.
Sorry, I have trouble trying to sign in.
Don't worry. You're welcome here. I was just demonstrating the thing that we are gonna do and explain a little about what is the server component idea and why it changed really the rules of React. Questions so far about React? Okay, so let's do the installation. So it's very straightforward. You need to go to wherever you have your code, and I will put also in the chat the link to the official documentation because really everything is there. Anyway. So I am following this documentation, like the official documentation, which I can connect with the thing that happened when they deprecate React, create React app. The official documentation of React will tell you that you use Next.js. And it is true, you should, because it's the straightforward process to learn how to create projects with React now. So we will copy this one. Go to your terminal wherever you have your code, and copy the command that we just copied from the internet. It will prompt you a bunch of questions. So you need to give your project a name because it will create a folder for that project. So let's do next workshop. I will not call it conference landing because I have already that project. You can call this conference landing if you want to create that conference landing page, whatever page you want to create. When I was doing the workshop of learning React, the example that they gave us was a hotels copy, a page with that, and I did something completely different. So you can do that without problem. But once you gave your project a name, they will ask you a bunch of things and basically follow the defaults. So would you like to use TypeScript? The default is no, do that. Would you like to use Slim? The default is yes, do that. Would you like to use Tailwind? The default is yes, do that. Use the SR directory. This is important because it changed the router and do the default, do yes. The app router, the default, yes. The customize the default is no, do that. And it will give you the prompts. So remember, basically follow the defaults on all the questions that I asked you. And as I tell you, it creates the folder for the name of your project. So you need to go to there. I call this the next workshop. And if you check this, you already have a bunch of code there. So at this moment, I can open Visual Studio with the code that is already there. you will see a bunch of stuff. But most important, I can run this already. It's the default that give you is already able to run. So let me close this. I don't think I'm in the right. Here you are. Okay, so we will see these things. And we will talk about the architecture in a minute. But if you open your terminal,
Cristina, did you mean to share only the Next.js page, or were you also wanting to share something else?
share something else. You are not seeing everything that I'm sharing?
Are you trying to share like a terminal or something?
Yes, the terminal.
Okay, because we don't see that.
Oh, okay. Let me check that you. Thank you so much for letting me know that. That was important.
I
Okay.
actually hadn't noticed, but Amrita wrote in the chat. So then I thought maybe I should speak up before you got
Yeah,
too much further.
thank you so much. Yeah, totally. Totally important. Okay. So I think I'm sharing now. Um, you see my terminal?
Yes.
Okay. And then you can see Visual Studio Code, right?
Yes.
So thank you, Amrita. So what it was happening is that when I follow the defaults on the installation of Create Next.js Next app, it will ask you a bunch of questions, and the idea is that you follow the default. So it will ask you for JavaScript, and the default is Node, and I will do that because I will prefer to work on JavaScript. If at some moment you feel confident of using Next with TypeScript, the only thing that you need to do is change to this to yes. And basically follow the defaults in all the questions, including installing Tailwind, which is I will not say it's the simplest framework for CSS that is now, but it's easy to work with them in Next.js. It's straightforward, at least. And that will create a folder for you for your project. So you need to go to that folder once they end the installation. I'm here in that folder. I can make this a little bigger. You need to see. My mentor is always telling me that my terminal is too small. And then at this moment, you can open Visual Studio with the code that they give you. We will talk about the whole configuration, but the most important for now is that it already has a bunch of scripts for you to run. So at this moment, you can do npm run dev, which is calling this script. And then you will see your page running on the local 3000. And they give you a bunch of stuff like for free in the initial setup. Is this whole page, which, okay, let's talk about the code. Questions so far? What is happening once you install Next.js? Cool. So what is happening? Everything is inside the source code, but most important, everything is inside the app folder here. The app folder is super important because it's the app folder that gives you immediately routers. And I will explain that in a second. But basically, you need to have an app folder inside your source. And you can kind of see here, you have this page, which is already telling you everything that is inside that home. everything here, if I change everything here, if I do hello from me and you save, it will change your home direct. See, immediately. But let's talk about more. Now you don't have that index, you have a layout, and the layout page is the page that will tell Next.js and by continuation the server, what are you rendering as the whole JavaScript, as the not only the HTML, but the whole JavaScript. And that's the reason you see in the layout the HTML tags. Everything that is happening here in the body. So now you don't have that ID root that you attach everything. This is the new configuration, the new architecture on Next.js is this layout page where you can have everything that is happening inside this HTML. And that also gives you more control about the title, the metadata that you need to change for SEO, for search engine optimization. If you change this one, it's just changing this thing and it immediately change, for example, the title of your page. You don't need to do any extra things for the metadata now with Next.js. Tell you, they really develop something that is completely straightforward now for late loading things directly into the server. Question so far, or the difference between the layout and the page?
I have a question,
Yes.
Christina. So how is this? So when you change the code here, you're not re-rendering it, is it? Is it just?
No.
Oh, okay.
It knows immediately. Now you don't have to. It's a great question, Amita. Thank you so much. We used to have to install a bunch of dependency to make sure that the server is keep checking the changes in the
Yes.
code. They eliminate all of that. You don't need to do anything else. And the Next.js will recognize that you changed something. And the server is running completely without you need to check to resend the server.
Got it. So that localhost port is open all the time.
Once you do npm run dev, so the only thing that you need to do in your package, you already have on all the scripts that you needed. And for now, the only one that you need is dev. So the only thing that you need to do once you are here is run npm run dev.
Yeah.
And it will start the localhost server and it will be there recognizing every change, because I was telling you by default, this is a server component. Like for Next.js, every component is a server component until you say so that is a client. And we will see when you have to say, no, this is a client component.
Got
Christina,
it. Thank you.
Yes.
Basically, the layout.js is similar to compared to React, is similar to the HTML page inside of the public folder. Isn't that right?
Exactly. Is that you don't have that anymore, because now the server component itself, like the server rendering itself, knows about JavaScript. So it's not that you are attaching something at the HTML, is that you are doing something in conjunction. So this is an HTML inside, it's still a component, but it knows about HTML and JavaScript at the same time. And that's the reason it's by default a server component. Any other question?
I think I got a little bit behind on things, and
Okay.
trying to run npm run dev just gives me a bunch of npm errors.
Okay.
Did I miss a step?
No, you installed this with all the defaults.
Are you in the folder?
Yeah, are you in your folder?
I thought I was.
The folder, you can do ls and you need to check that you see the package JSON. Or I will show you something super cool that I learned. Let me kill the server. Where am I? Just learn this one.
Oh, I see what happened. Mine got, I have 2 levels with the same name. That's why it's
Ah,
not working.
That happened to me.
okay. Make
All
sure
right.
that you are in the right folder.
Yeah, problem solved. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so the thing that I was telling you that makes this super easy is that once we can create, like, we can create here, this is not how you're supposed to do it, but you could, because Next.js is super straightforward. So you can create here an object that tells you and it gives you, and if you put that here, again, I'm doing this just to prove you that you are now have superpowers about the whole configuration of your patch, but this is not how you do an ad bar. It's just that it's super easy now. And you see your page, the local host, which I host. You will see the testing immediately. And it's giving me an error because it doesn't have all the things that should happen. But it's as easy as putting everything inside the body, and you will see things happening. But let's do this correctly because it's even more straightforward. So you will see in the example that I have an bar with an agenda that goes to agenda, speakers, we goes to speakers, and code of conduct that goes to code of conduct. This is the landing page of an imaginary conference. So if you want to create something like this, imagine that you want to have an agenda and speakers. The only thing that you need to do is inside the app, create the folder for that. So here inside the app, you will create a folder that called agenda because you want to have an agenda. And here inside the agenda, you need to have, and this is the only thing mandatory, something that is called page JX. And it has to be page, it has to have that name. The file itself has to have that name. You can call your component whatever you want. Like you can change this name, although the official documentation will tell you that you have the reference of the page, so you don't forget that you are working on a page. But basically, if you have this, configuration now, and you go to your localhost / agenda, you will see your component working immediately. It's as straightforward as that. Again, the only thing mandatory is that the component itself, that the file itself is called page. And that is what it makes the router. Well, and that the folder is inside app. If
So-
you,
Sorry, so every folder that we create inside the app should have the page.
if you
file.
want to make it a router,
Okay.
the official documentation, for example, tell you that if you want to have components that are not routers, you create a component folder. You remember those, like the component?
Yes.
This folder doesn't need to be a router, because here it will go your navbar, your footer, your whatever component you want to reuse. And then here you will not have a page. You will
Right.
have, but if you want to create a router, you need to put a page inside the folder that you want to route.
Got it. Thank you.
That's it. You don't need to use router hooks anymore. You don't need to use anything, any other dependency. You just create a page file inside the folder that you want to route, and that's it. Now, it's not perfect. Imagine I have been doing a dashboard for a client, a freelance client, and she has a bunch of routers for a bunch of graphics. It can become crazy very faster, because then you have a bunch of folders here for all the routers, and everything will have page as a name. So you could have, like, you need to be organized in your architecture to keep track of the things that you are routing in. And that's the reason the official documentation will tell you that the file need to be named page, but your component could have any name that you wanted. It's just that they recommended that you use page either way, because then you will remember this component is directly a router. That makes sense?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So how easy is that? How different of doing React router it is that? Like, if I want to create the speakers, I just create the folder speakers. And then inside the folder, I create the file page. And then this component, it will be immediately this component will be immediately a router, which is super cool, right? You have to give me that. It is super straightforward.
Yeah, and it's more structured and very much more easy to understand than to understand how you have to render React hooks. And there are so many hooks, like so many things that go on over there. So this way, it's much more structured for me.
Yes, exactly. It's super straightforward. They change completely the necessity of dependencies. They eliminate completely that. I'm following the official documentation recommendation that will tell you that you have inside the app the things that you want to have as router. Everything that goes in, you don't need when they say here pages, they are talking about these pages. because this is the only mandatory thing. The file has to be named page. There are fewer mandatory things in Next.js. That's also true. No, you have a question.
Yeah, basically the way you said, correct me if I misunderstand that. The way you said, if you create a folder with the pages.jsx inside, basically you don't need to create a router. It's like
Exactly.
in React, we do have to create a router separately. We do not need that.
Nothing at all. You don't need everything else. If you create a folder with a page file inside, you are basically creating a router.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now let's use this component folder because the official documentation will tell you if you don't need a router, don't create the page folder, the page file. It's as easy as that. Like you can still have components that are not routers because you still need those. Like not everything in a file is a router. So here inside the folder component, you can create, for example, which is the correct way of doing, you can create your navbar. And I personally, this is a personal preference. You don't need to do this. I will call my components just .js. So I know that these are just components. If you prefer to have these also as JSX, is completely valid, and Next.js will understand, it will not tell you. I prefer to call my components .js just because I will recognize that this is just a component, not a router. Is that clear? There is a personal preference completely. You don't need to do this at all. And then here, they create a bunch of components by itself that will give you a bunch of superpowers, is a way of telling, but it's actually a bunch of props that are for default. And one of the most important is the link idea. So let's import link. Well, it's already there with Next because it's a built-in component for Next.js. So you don't need to install anything else. It comes with Next.js. But the cool thing is that when we use it, if you use a link, it will give you a bunch of like props that you can use. One of the most important is that you can put reference as JavaScript or as text. Let's do it as test because I want to call the ones that we create, agenda and speakers. This is already, like this already exists. If I go to speakers, I see my component. And if I go to agenda, I see my component. Because these are the pages that I created. I just call in the URL here. And then because we're creating an ad bar, this is the first time that you can use all the classes that Tailwind will give you. I personally don't think that Tailwind is simple to learn, but basically what they did is that instead of that you create a whole file of CSS and that you create the styles different, you have all the styles already there for you to use it. The learning curve is that you need to know how to use it. So for example, let's do this with a background, and now you say background, and it will give you what you want. the way I'm seeing all this because I installed an extension that is called, let me tell you the recommendation of, yes, this one. I installed this extension that is called Tailwind CSS, and it will allow me to see all the things that Tailwind is giving me because I don't remember by memory, by heart, all these things. So that's the reason I see the colors, and it tells me what it means in CSS, in terms of CSS. So it's a huge extension if you want to, like, it's an important extension if you want to work with Tailwind, because otherwise you have to rely in your memory, or the official documentation is there, but it's complicated. Start typing and checking. Let's use Flex because I will use Flex. Let's do, well, I need to be sticky in the, and let's do sticky, top 0 to be on the top. Let's do for now that one just to see them. And of course, I'm not doing this correctly. The link will give you the link, but then you need, I want to, the link involve the paragraph. So what I'm putting is the whole link inside the paragraph because this one will say agenda, you see, to see the link. That's the thing that I'm doing here. That's a typo there, but I just want that you see it. Oh, well, what do we need to do in order to see a component happening? Like, you know this because you know a little of React.
We include the component in the landing.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
need to call the component, otherwise it's not happening. Now I will call this component because it's my navbar and I want that it's always there no matter where. I will call this component not in my page, but in my layout. So the first thing is important. It's importing. So I will import navbar, and you need to go to components navbar. And then here inside the body, which is the thing that is bringing all the HTML, you will use your component. And if you do that, you will see the navbar. And we are not seeing the text because the text is also white. So let me put that. You see here the agenda. And it's already working in the whole project because it's in the layout. So, and if you click, it works. It gives you the agenda. So let's do this even better, and let's create a home link so we can have the whole navigation already working. And the home is just the router for the local host. And I will give this also the class name for the test color just to see it. And now I have the 3 of them. So if I go to home, I home. If I go to agenda, I am in agenda. And if I go to speaker, I'm in speakers. and I can navigate. It's as simple as that. Questions, confusions? This is the moment to ask.
Sure. Could you show your layout file again, please?
Yes, my layout file is here. So the thing that I did is I import the component, and then I'm using inside the body. Everything that you need to do to put, it will have to be inside the body.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Cristina.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me think.
Okay, yeah.
Isn't the layout page, isn't it the same as the app.js in React?
It's
Does it
more
do the
than
same
that. It's more than that because it's now the thing that changed with Next.js is that now you don't have this HTML that has JavaScript attached. You have something that is called iteration, that is HTML with JavaScript itself. So they like superpower, like HTML with steroids. Like they give HTML the JavaScript part itself. So now you don't have an HTML part different than in a component. If you see here, this is just a component, but it recognizes this HTML tag and it's telling the server this is an HTML page with JavaScript itself. So it's more than just the HTML, the bones of HTML that you used to know. But it has the function of organizing the idea of HTML. Like if we have a footer, it has to be here if you want that footer be in the whole project. If you want something individually, then you put it in the page, right? Like let me show you that. So this is just for example, you don't need to do this, but imagine that we don't import the navbar here in the layout. We import the navbar in the page. So you can do that because it's just a component, right? So you can use a component, whatever, right?
But you have to do it on every page.
Exactly. If I put it here.
Yeah, my question is more like, isn't the same thing when we do React? We create whatever component that we want onto every page in the app.js. Wait, app.js or index.js? Forgot. Sorry. Oh,
No,
sorry
don't
for
worry.
messing up.
No, don't worry. It is more. So they change completely the architecture. You don't have the things that you used to have. Because now you are not dealing with HTML and JavaScript for separate. They call it this iteration. That is an HTML that already have JavaScript, which is a different thing. It's like a different situation. So now you don't have that root thing. They keep the name root layout only so you know that this is the bones of the whole structure, but it's completely different. It's not anymore that just HTML. It is something bigger. It is something that is iterated. that is HTML with JavaScript itself. That's the reason when I was telling you without showing the code that they changed the way that the web is doing, it's hard to understand, but they really did. They changed the concept. They give us something more powerful than just HTML. And now you see my component is working, but as soon as I leave, I lose the component because it's not in the route of the layout. It's just in a component. See? That's the difference. Let me go back to layout. Any other question about this? This is huge. The first time that I saw this is like, wow, they really changed how.
Yeah, I did couple of those. Next.js is like a what?
Exactly, because they
And
changed
I
how
had
to.
to refer back to React because it's like it's just head spinning at first and still now.
Yeah, but it's basically that you have something more powerful than just HTML. You have HTML that already have JavaScript there. It's very new. And that's the reason there is a huge gap there in the industry. Like people like web developers don't know how to deal with this because they it's the first time that they see it. And it's very new. Next.js changed the documentation last year. So the React, the official documentation, the React changed and pushed it for using Next.js last year. So this thing is super new in the industry, and you will still have a bunch of people that say that is way too complicated, that they complicate React. Because basically it creates a new thing. It's not just a JavaScript framework that you attach to HTML. They create a new thing that is this iteration. And some people think we didn't need to create. I personally think that they made it super straightforward and super powerful to work. Other questions? Let me go back to the. Okay, so let's see. We already see this, how to do routers. Let me show you how to create a client component because it's important. I was telling you by default, everything, these things that we create are a server component for React at this moment. Because now by default, when you create a component in React, it is a server component. But sometimes you need to have a client component. What is a client component? Well, the first thing that you need to know is that a client component is when you need to interact with the user, because that is still in the client side, because the browser needs to keep take information for the user. What are the components that do that by default? Forms. So one easy way of identify as a client component is every single time that you need to use a form, it will be a client component. And let me show you what I mean by that. Because when you use a form without telling Next.js that is a client component, it will give you an error. And I want to show you that so you will see what is happening there. So let's create, give me 1 second and I will have the code. One minute. Okay, so let's create a contact form. It's the easy one. So the same way that we are doing, we create inside the app the folder for contact. And then inside the folder, let's create a page. And here, let's create a form. So let's do a form. Very easy form. With let's do an input. Input will have a bunch of type. It has to be text. And let's do name. All this name. Why not? And doing an ID too. Name. Self-closing. And then a button for type submit. And let's close this and submit. Where are you coming?
Cristina, I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
You said anything that has to interact with the client supposed to be in the client. Why do you create this as a server? Because the
Because
page.
I want to show you the error and I will
Oh.
tell you how to solve that problem.
Oh,
Because
okay.
it's just one line of code also.
Okay, tell me.
Don't worry. Don't worry at all. It's a great question. Okay. But still, I don't understand where are you complaining.
I think you're
You
missing
don't have the closing.
the close bracket.
Oh,
The
yeah, the close bracket. Thank you. Okay, so I have this content page and it's inside the page. So in theory, if I go to 300 and I go to contact, I will see it. And it gives me an error. Did I type this correctly? It's very sensitive because it makes the router. So remember that is upper and lower case sensitive. And the thing that you need to do for making this actually form and that is without problem asking information for the user, this form will not work otherwise, is that you put here on top, use client. And that's it. That's how you tell Next.js that this component is a client component. That's the whole thing that you need to do. At this moment, React Next.js and by default React know that this component is a client component. So now you can have all the functionality of the form without interfering. Questions? It is that easy. I know when I saw it in the workshop, that I was like, wow, really? It's just one line of Slack, and that's it.
Krishna, can you repeat again that what happened again if you create a form without use client? What would that do again?
Well, the thing is, it doesn't work, and it can't make it work because I'm using a form, which it needs to be a client component.
Do you mean that if we don't use the use client, the form component you cannot click submit? Is that?
Exactly. Yeah, it
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
work.
Oh, okay.
Which put there an asterisk. I will explain you how to, because there is a way of giving of using server components now. But for now, if you have a client component, which are the components that interact with the user, then the only thing that you need to do is use client.
Just to sum up, right?
Mhm.
So with only server components, we just type our code and whatever routing we want to do within the page file. But then if we want a client component, we put it under the components folder and we reference that.
You see, this page is inside it's not a
Oh,
component.
sorry.
It doesn't need to be, it could be a router because this, for example, is a form and that also is a router. Like
Yeah.
the client component doesn't need to be just a component that you use without the router. No, it could be a router too. The difference is if you want to interact with the user or not. Because now when you are serving this project to the server, it will have all the information itself because it's more than JavaScript. The HTML is this iteration thing that they call it now. But if you want the ability to interact with the user, that part is still just JavaScript. And for that part,
we can't do that with just routing, right? Yeah.
Exactly. No, you need to tell Next.js, hey, this part will interact with the user. So it's a client component. And how you do that? With use client. That's it.
Got it. And this will be called in the layout file, right?
No.
Sorry, I think I missed that part.
And in the contact part. The thing is that because it's a page, I'm here in the contact. I'm not putting this component in any other part just yet. I could.
Oh, because it's a page. Right. But it's a page, but it's a client.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because the client component doesn't need to be just a component. It could be a router too.
But only components have to be called, right? if it's just a component, no interaction, then it needs to be called somewhere, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So imagine that you have a component here that is form, right?
Yeah.
This component, if you do a form here, yeah, for now, let's put it here.
Mm.
This component, you need to call it at some point. And you can call it in the page of contact, which will make everything a little. So I can delete the form here and put it here. And in that case, I need to import it, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's already done.
Oh, cool. So if I import form and I'm using form here, let me close this correctly. This also works. Like,
Mhm.
here will be a form. See?
Mhm.
This architecture also work. But in any case, this need to be a client component
Mm.
because
Got it.
it's interacting with the user.
Right, right. Makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Questions? Blowing your mind. When I learned this, my mind was, whoa, they changed everything. So it's totally okay.
Yeah, okay. Just try to understand. Basically, you put this contact. First of all, you create this component as a server component, and then you turn it into the client component.
Yes.
But why do you do that? Can't you just create this page like a form? Because
Yes.
the form.js is already client component, right? And
Yes.
okay,
And
the reason you create it as a server component because you need the routing.
Yes,
Is that
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
If you don't need any route, you don't need the routing to anywhere, then you don't need to create a page.
Exactly. But
okay.
You are totally right. And you are totally right that even if I'm doing this in this new architecture, I have a component that is a form, right? Like let me put this form, copy paste, and we will go faster. So if I have this form in component, this is just a simple component, and I'm calling inside the page of this router, this router doesn't need to be the client component. It has to be the form itself. And I will tell you, yes, that's absolutely true. Because here is the other thing that happened with Next.js. By default, everything is a server component. So they ask you that the client component will be the leaf of your tree. Remember, we're still creating a tree. Like, where I can draw. You remember the trees of components. We're still doing that. A little more straightforward, but the layout is still the layout, and it has the navbar here. And for now, I have just the page, and this is still creating the layout, the page, and then I have here the agenda and the speakers at the same level. And I just create the contact form, right? They will ask you that the clients component are the leaf of this tree. It's recommended. They It actually will not tell you if you want to create, like make the whole layout a client, but it's not a good practice. In the best practice, in the recommendation, will tell you this, that is only the last leaf of this tree, the contact, which is really the contact form. This should be the client component, because it's this one, the only one that is interacting with the user. The rest could be server components, but because they are not interacting with the user. Questions? Let me put colors to this thing so we will see it. Um, Make sense? Why this is the client component? And how everything else could be just a server component by itself? So the thing to remember is for Next.js, any component is a server component until you say the contrary. And how you say the contrary is with use client. This identifies this component as a client component. Okay, so we go back to, yes, bear with me in this activity because I want to do this to make sure that you understand. Each one of you will tell me something that you understand from this workshop, and something that may click now. And at the end of the whole session, hopefully, like the 5 Saturdays, we will have a whole label here about how to do this. So each one of you just tell me something that you learned, and I will put it here, creating this collection. Who wants to go first?
I can go.
Okay.
I guess like one of the things that I thought was pretty cool is like the routing, not having to set up a whole thing like we used to do before, but instead, like as long as we add that page.js file, then we can use, or JSX, we can use it, and that's like our routing, so it's made super simple.
Exactly. It's routing without hooks, without extra dependencies. It's just in the architecture itself of the project, which is super straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Who, who, who else wants to go learn something new?
I'll go. I think that the layout page, layout.js and page.js allow you to create like the interface for the route.
Yeah. It's called hydration again, because it's in the official documentation, and you can search more things about hydration, because I believe that it will change how we do web development, because it's faster and it gives you a bunch of control that you didn't have before, like all the business around SEO, about search engineer is now again in the web development field because you can change that very easy. Thank you for that, Tara. Who else wants to go?
I can give it a try.
Yeah.
We add use client for components or pages that are going to be client side, as opposed to everything else that is server side.
Yep, it's as simple as that.
I can go next.
Mm-hmm.
I learned the differences why we use the client versus the server, or use server versus the client components.
Yeah, totally. That's another cool thing to learn today. Any else wants to go?
Well, I can give it a try. I don't know. So we learn how to organize our files now that it was so different before. So I think that's the one that stick more to me. Like,
Yeah, totally. I will say it's a straightforward architecture. Some people don't want it because it can create exponential very quickly, and I have seen it. So that's true. It's not perfect, but it's at least completely new. Okay, I think we went even 30 minutes early, but that was everything that I want to teach you in this first one. Yes, I will publish the recording session later today, and I will send you the links. You will find also everything in the repo. If you are not following the repo, I can give you again. But I will put everything there. The slides are already there. The working code is already there, but I will tell you don't use it. Like, don't try to copy paste that. We will try to build it as we are going. We have now the routers, which used to be the most difficult thing that you need to do on React. And now you start with that because it's super straightforward. Like if you read the official documentation, the first thing that they tell you is do the routers because it's just create the folders and the pages. And that's it.
I do have a question, but we might gonna see this later. Like,
Uh-huh.
when you're debugging this with the browser, it works the same way. Oh, nice.
It works the same, and it works with React with the debugger of React components. Is the same. I will explain you a little more of Tailwind next session, so you understand what is happening there with the styles and what can you do if you don't want to work with Tailwind. It's still, well, it's super popular, and pretty much all the projects on Next.js using Tailwind, but it's still an optional thing. Like you can decide I don't want to work with this one and work with the styles as CSS styles as we know it. And I want to show you that. So you at least know that you can opt out of Tailwind if you don't feel like confident. Any other question? How excited are you of working on Next.js? At least it seems less intimidating, right? And that was the whole goal of the session. Like it is not as complicated as they told us. It's just that they create a new thing, this whole HTML with and JavaScript, this iteration thing. But it's not difficult to grasp.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much, Cristina.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for spending a couple of hours of your Saturday learning with me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm super excited about this. and I hope to see you next Saturday.
Yeah, this was great. This is very, very, very structured. Thank you so much for taking the time to even explain all of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and being here. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
I have a
Now-
question.
All right.
Yeah.
Do we need to have something set up for next meeting? Like, I don't know if this is gonna continue or we just, okay.
We
Okay.
will continue. We will let we stop today. You don't need to set up anything different.
Oh, okay.
wait. We're going to have meeting every Sunday.
Every Saturday of August.
Oh, Saturday. Oh, wow.
Yeah, Sunday.
Okay.
Let's not meet on Sunday. Every Saturday of August. August is one of those perfect square months. Happens once in a while that you have 5 Saturdays in a month.
Mm.
So we'll use it of all of them.
Okay. All right. I'll try to remember that because I'm going somewhere and I have to calculating time change. Okay.
Yeah. But I will send on Monday the invitation with everything that we saw today and everything, so you can mark your calendar.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye.